And that's all been good. Given that it was not a happy family, I'm glad I can say that now. But what resulted from all of this? Well, in just thinking about leadership now, girls in women's traditional roles can be real trouble if you have a bad husband. I learned that. And when I think about traditional roles, I realize that while they can be problematic as they were in my family, they also can teach really strong skills in help and cooperation, collaboration, nurturing, and so on. What I do find is the red flag for me, by knowing this self as a little girl, is that people who are sexist really get under my skin. And as a leader and living in the world we live in, women are going to run into that occasionally, thankfully, much less often than my mom did, so let's say. So that's my red flag. That's my lesson. That's my red flag. Very important for a teacher to know that, since we teach young men and young women. Another thing that this resulted in is that I am a real self-starter. I'm independent. Nobody has to tell me what the next opportunity is. I work hard. And back then, in contrast to that unhappy family that I'm afraid I had to start this conversation off with, I knew that people really should be helping each other. And so I tend to be nurturing to other people. Big lesson. Do not be like your parents are. Now, sad lesson on one level, but a big, strong, good lesson as well. Are you following me when I say that? I don't really mean to be trashing my family. They no longer are with us, but I still don't want to be trashing my family. They couldn't do any better themselves. But what I find is that that lesson also sends up some red flags in my professional life as a leader. And that is that traditionally, leaders haven't been seen as particularly nurturing or particularly personal in the stereotype. Now, you know, just imagine the stereotype from, I'm hoping, quite a few years ago. So people don't necessarily know what to do with me. When I was new at Grand Valley, it was really a problem. I think they thought I was up to something. I don't know. It was interesting. So, two big lessons from my family. Now, I'm just going to pause right here for a minute. I actually heard one of these lessons, or one of these situations, from Mary Beth as we were eating lunch today, and I don't know if you want to share what you were talking about. But think about what your family life was like, and where you were in your family, and if you had encouragement toward leadership, or if, in spite of the situation, you learned some things that would be helpful in leadership as you were growing up. What were your circumstances? And this is really the value of this exercise, is for you to look internally to see what happened in your life. Anyone want to share? Mary Beth, do you want to? Have I put you on the spot too much?
I can do that for sure. I came from a family of 7. Some of you have already heard this. It was a cultural thing. My father did not believe women should go to college. My mother was meek, sort of did everything. She was very submissive, much like I am in a relationship. No. Anyway, my parents didn't believe I should go to college. And my father and my mother thought I should be a lawyer because I had a tendency to speak my mind. And I said, I am going to college. There is value. I will make something of myself. And I did. And I did it against all odds. But so I can relate to where you came from. I think the lesson to be learned is you have to believe in yourself and not believe in the negative feedback that you get.
Good. And I would say she continues to be feisty at this moment. John seems to be nodding. Okay. Well, it's different for all of us. What about some of the rest of you? Do you have things you'd like to share? I don't want to pry, but if you feel like sharing. How did your family think about leadership Fred, go ahead.
I think this is along the lines of what you were saying, but it starts out a little bit different. My dad was a firefighter down in Once. Ninth grade education, came out of the war, basically. Worked at firefighting from then on. And so with each succeeding degree, he had less and less of an idea of what I was doing and more amazement that people were paying me for it. But I think that I am like him in my own way. There's dissonance and consonance with your lesson thing. My dad was not an educated person. He ran into burning buildings and did his best to save people, and he saved about 6 people. He was in some terrible accidents. I remember him being in the hospital several times when I was growing up. What I take from that is not to run into burning buildings, but to be unafraid of doing the right thing, and to see what can come of that. And if you fail, do the right thing the next day. I think there are other lessons that I can report that you would not recognize, but I would say that in emulating my father, I'm different from him in some very similar ways.
Thanks. That's very interesting. I love hearing people's stories. Anyone else? Okay, students, I'm going to get on your back.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
So I was raised oldest of 4, so I'm a second mom. And my parents raised us Christian, which I'm really grateful for, but that does sometimes come with like an idea about what women should and shouldn't do. What's interesting is my dad's a psychologist, and when we were kids, he did his dissertation on power structures in marriage, and which ones lead to the happiest marriages. And he was expecting that those in which the male was dominant would be the happiest. But what he actually found was that the happiest was where it was shared equally. And I'm really grateful that my dad was open enough to really like take a look at that and rethink his ideas about religion and about gender roles. And never once did I ever feel like he felt like I needed to step back. He was very encouraging that I should do whatever I could do.
Good. How does that affect you when you're in a leadership position now?
I don't consider my gender very much, actually. It's nice. I'm kind of surprised when other people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So a lesson that's a very happy lesson. Your dad released those findings after he found out. That's really neat. And unfortunately, stereotypes aren't always confronted for factual proof. And we go along and we have those influences. Maybe the lesson or the red flag for you might be not everybody will see you as as unaware of gender as you are in a leadership position, but you've got the right side of it.